So let's talk about some additional information you need to know going into the exam for the solutions architect with ElastiCache. First of all the caches in ElastiCache do not support IAM authentication. The IAM policies you will define on ElastiCache are only used for AWS API level security. That means creating a cache, deleting the cache, that kind of stuff. But any operation within the cache is not using IAM. Now, if you want to authenticate to Redis, you can use Redis auth, and you can set a password token when you create a Redis cluster, and this allows you to have a password when going into your cache. This is an extra level of security on top of security groups that you can use for your cache. And you can support SSL security for in-flight encryption. Whereas for Memcached, it supports SSL-based authentication, which is quite advanced, so the different kind of authentication mechanism. So if you look at the security of your cache, an EC2 instance will have its own security group, which can access Redis with its own security group as well. So you can do security group level security using ElastiCache. And then for encryption in flight, you have SSL encryption. And for authentication, you can have Redis auth if you're using the Redis kind of cache in ElastiCache. Now, there are three kinds of patterns for loading data into ElastiCache. The number one is lazy loading, where all the read data is cached and data can become stale in the cache. Write through, which is to add or update data in the cache whenever it is written to a database, but there's no stale data. And using ElastiCache as a session store that we saw before, and then we can expire a session using the time to live features. Now, caching is very hard, and there's this very famous quote in computer science that there are only two hard things in computer science: caching, invalidation, and naming things. So caching is a very complicated topic. I'm giving you a very high-level overview, but let's illustrate the lazy loading strategy here. So your application, if it has a cache hit in ElastiCache, gets the data from the cache. Otherwise, there's a cache miss. Therefore, you read from the database and you write to the cache. This is something we've seen from before, and it is called lazy loading because only when you don't have a cache hit, then you load the data into Amazon ElastiCache. So now let's talk about the use cases for Redis, and there's one you need to know going into the exam. It is around creating a gaming leaderboard. So it is very complex. The idea is that you want to say who is number one, who is number two, who is number three at any moment in time for your game. And so there is a feature in Redis called sorted sets, which guarantees both uniqueness and element ordering. And each time an element is added is going to be ranked in real time and then added in the correct order. The idea is that if you have a Redis cluster, you can create a real-time leaderboard with a number one, number two, and number three player in real time, and all the Redis cache will have the same leaderboard available. That means that your clients, when talking to your Amazon ElastiCache using Redis, they can have access to this real-time leaderboard, and we don't need to program that feature application side. We can just leverage Redis with the sorted sets to get access to a real-time leaderboard. And this is yet again something that can come up in the exam. Okay, so that's it for this lecture. I hope you liked it, and I will see you in the next lecture.